The air in his office is different today. It's always been a space of shared dreams, frantic energy, a united front against impossible deadlines. My office, technically since I'm CEO, but he's the COO, my right hand, my husband. We built this, brick by metaphorical brick, sleepless night by sleepless night. Now, though, the air is thin, sterile, like a hospital waiting room where bad news is delivered in hushed, apologetic tones. He sits behind the sprawling mahogany desk, a desk we picked out together, a symbol of how far we'd come. Today, it looks like a barricade. His fingers, usually so expressive when he's outlining a new strategy or making a point, are steepled, still. Too still. The smile he offers is a pale imitation, a twitch of facial muscles that doesn't reach his eyes. His eyes. They're usually a warm, reassuring brown, the color of rich earth, grounding. Now, they're opaque, shuttered, reflecting the harsh fluorescent light overhead like polished stones. I can't read them, and that's a first in 15 years. "Sarah, thanks for coming in," he says, his voice a carefully modulated baritone. Formal, distant, like he's addressing a stranger, not the woman who knows the exact rhythm of his breathing in the dead of night. A knot of ice forms in my stomach, cold and sharp. I didn't know why he'd summon me with a curt email. Urgent, need to discuss Q4 projections, when Q4 projections were my domain, and we usually hash them out over takeout, sprawled on the living room floor with charts and spreadsheets. This is wrong. Every instinct, honed by years in the trenches of business and marriage, is screaming. I try for normalcy, a breezy tone. "Mark, you know Q4 is my baby. What's so urgent they couldn't wait for our usual pizza summit?" I even manage a small smile, but it feels brittle, like glass about to shatter. He doesn't return it. He clears his throat, a small, nervous sound that is so unlike him. Mark is, or was, confidence personified. He faces down hostile boards, charms skeptical investors, rallies disheartened teams. This is a man I don't recognize. "Sarah, this is difficult," he pauses, and the silence stretches, taut and humming with unspoken dread. The cityscape outside the panoramic window, usually a vista of our shared success, seems to mock me, indifferent and glittering. My own reflection in the glass is a pale ghost, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. Difficult. The word hangs there, heavy and suffocating. My heart starts a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate for escape. What could be so difficult that he can't meet my gaze for more than a fleeting second? Are we losing a major client? Is there a catastrophic financial miscalculation? My mind races through a dozen business nightmares, each one more terrifying than the last, but none of them, absolutely none, prepare me for what comes next. He finally looks at me, a direct, almost challenging stare, but there's a flicker, a tiny waver in his pupils that betrays the turmoil beneath the carefully constructed facade. "The board has decided, we've decided, that the company needs to go in a new direction." The board. We are the board, primarily. Along with two investors who've always deferred to our vision. My vision. This company was my brainchild, nurtured from a fledgling idea into a thriving enterprise. He joined me, yes, brought his operational genius, but the soul, the heartbeat, that was mine. A new direction? I echo, my voice barely a whisper. The ice in my stomach is spreading, numbing my limbs. What kind of new direction, Mark? And why wasn't I consulted? I'm the CEO, the words sound hollow, even to my own ears. A title, suddenly stripped of its power. He shuffles some papers on his desk, papers I haven't seen, their edges crisp and unfamiliar. It's about a more aggressive growth strategy. A different leadership style. My breath catches. Different leadership style? He finally says it, the words precise, surgical, and utterly devastating. "Sarah, your position is being made redundant." Redundant. Such a clinical, impersonal word to describe the evisceration of my life's work. My career. My identity. It's a word for obsolete machinery, for outdated processes. Not for me. Not for the woman who poured her blood, sweat, and tears into every fiber of this company. Not for his wife. The world tilts. The sounds of the office outside, the distant ringing of phones, the murmur of voices, the click of keyboards, fade into a dull roar. All I can hear is the frantic thumping of my own heart and his voice, still speaking, but the words are just noise, a meaningless drone. Understand this as a shock, generous severance package, ensure a smooth transition. A smooth transition. For whom? My mind, bless its stubborn insistence on logic even in the face of emotional obliteration, snags on a detail. The board decided? Mark, we are the majority. You and I. This doesn't happen unless you agreed. Unless you wanted this. He flinches then, a barely perceptible tightening around his jaw. It was a difficult decision, Sarah, but yes. I believe it's what's best for the company. Best for the company. The company I built. The company he's now tearing from my grasp. The betrayal is a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. It's not just my job. It's him. He's doing this. Then, a movement at the edge of my vision. The door to his private anteroom, the one that connects to a rarely used corridor, opens. And she steps out. Tiffany, his executive assistant. Or, as I'm rapidly, sickeningly understanding, so much more. She's younger, all bright, manufactured smiles, and an ambition that glitters too sharply in her eyes. She's wearing a new suit, expensive, tailored, a power suit. It's a shade of blue I've always liked, a shade I wore to our last company gala. The irony is a bitter pill.
She doesn't look at me.
She moves to stand slightly behind Mark, a proprietary air about her, like she belongs there. Like she's already part of the new landscape, a landscape from which I am being brutally excised. The pieces click into place with horrifying clarity. The late nights he attributed to work, the sudden, hushed phone calls. The faint, unfamiliar perfume I'd sometimes catch on his shirts, dismissed with a wave of his hand and a plausible excuse. The growing distance between us, a chasm I'd tried to bridge, thinking it was stress, the pressures of running a business. It wasn't stress. It was her. This isn't just a corporate coup. It's a deeply personal demolition.
He's not just firing his CEO.
He's firing his wife. And he's giving my job, my life, to his mistress. The ice in my stomach shatters, and a hot, consuming rage floods through me, so potent it makes me tremble. But on my face, I imagine, is only a frozen mask of disbelief. He's still talking, something about confidentiality, about professionalism. Professionalism. The word is a joke, a sick, twisted punchline. I don't hear the rest. I'm just looking at him, at this man who shared my bed, my dreams, my life, and seeing a stranger. A ruthless, calculating stranger who has just detonated a bomb in the heart of everything I hold dear. And as I look at him, and at her, standing there smugly, a tiny, cold spark ignites in the wreckage of my emotions. A spark of something other than pain. Something that feels dangerously like resolve. He thinks he's won. He thinks he's just neatly disposed of me. He has no idea who he's just crossed. He has no idea what I'm capable of when everything is taken from me. He's about to find out. The building, our building, suddenly feels like it's holding its breath, waiting. And in that charged silence, I know this isn't just an ending. This is the beginning of a war. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Your support means I can keep sharing these stories, these moments where life throws everything it has at us, and we have to decide how to stand back up. The drive home is a blur. Or perhaps, more accurately, I am a blur, a ghost moving through a world that suddenly seems too sharp, too bright, too real. The steering wheel is cold beneath my clammy hands. My knuckles are white. I remember snippets, Mark's voice lower now, trying to feign sympathy as he handed me a box for my personal effects. Tiffany's smirk, quickly hidden as I walked past her new, my old, desk. The pitying, averted gazes of my team, my friends, people I'd hired, mentored, celebrated with. They knew, or suspected. How long had I been the oblivious fool? The house is quiet. Too quiet. It's a big house, one we bought when the company first turned a significant profit. Each room a testament to a success that now feels like a lie. Our photographs smile down from the walls, us on vacation, us at company parties, us on our wedding day. Young, hopeful, naive. I want to tear them down, smash the glass, obliterate the memory of the man I thought he was. But I don't. I sink onto the plush sofa, the one we spent weeks choosing, and the silence presses in, suffocating. This was supposed to be our sanctuary. Now it feels like a beautifully appointed prison cell. 15 years. We met in college, two ambitious kids with more dreams than sense. I had the idea, a revolutionary software concept. He had the business acumen, the knack for operations and strategy. We were a perfect team. Or so I thought. We bootstrapped, working out of my tiny apartment, fueled by cheap coffee and sheer willpower. I remember the thrill of our first contract, the terror of our first big presentation, the exhaustion and exhilaration of launching our product. We did it together. Every milestone, every victory, every setback, we faced it side by side. He wasn't just my business partner. He was my best friend, my confidant, my lover. The lines blurred, seamlessly, beautifully. When did they start to diverge? When did he start seeing me as an obstacle, a piece to be removed from the board? The early years were a whirlwind. We poured everything we had into the company, our time, our money, our energy. There were no boundaries between work and life. It was all one exhilarating, exhausting climb. I remember him holding me when a crucial investor pulled out at the last minute, his quiet strength a balm to my panic. I remember celebrating till dawn when we landed the client that put us on the map, his laughter echoing my own. He'd whisper, "We're a dynasty, Sarah. You and me. Invincible." I believed him. God, how I believed him. I was the visionary, the innovator, the one who could see the future and drag the company towards it. He was the pragmatist, the executor, the one who made my visions reality. He'd say, "You dream it, I'll build it," and he did. He was brilliant, driven, and I loved him for it. I loved his intensity, his focus, the way his mind worked. I thought it was all for us, for the company, for our shared future. How could I have been so blind? The signs, in retrospect, are there, like faint footprints in the snow I chose to ignore. The increasing number of late meetings he insisted I didn't need to attend. The way he started subtly undermining my decisions in front of the senior team, cloaking it as playing devil's advocate, the small, unexplained expenses on the company card, which Tiffany, as his assistant, would have processed. She was always there, wasn't she? Hovering in the background, a shadow I never paid enough attention to. Efficient, a little too eager, always with a perfectly applied layer of makeup and an unnerving ability to anticipate Mark's needs before he even voiced them. I'd dismissed my unease as paranoia, the stress of leadership. I trusted him. Implicitly. Utterly. That was my mistake. My trust was a comfortable blanket he used to smother my intuition. Now, the warmth of those memories is gone, replaced by a chilling clarity. Every shared laugh, every supportive touch, every whispered promise is cast in a new, sinister light. Was it all a performance? Alongkon? How much of our life together was real, and how much was a carefully constructed illusion designed to keep me compliant while he plotted my downfall? The pain is a raw, gaping wound. It's not just the loss of my company, my career. It's the shattering of my world, the realization that the man I built my life with is capable of such profound betrayal, such calculated cruelty. I wander through the silent rooms, each object a painful reminder. The painting we bought on our honeymoon in Italy. The slightly chipped mug he always used for his morning coffee. The books on my nightstand, unread because I was too busy building our empire. His empire, apparently. The desire I had in the beginning before Mark was simple, to create something meaningful, something that would make a difference. And to share that journey with someone I loved. For a long time, I thought I had it all. The perfect partnership, in business and in life.
It was a beautiful dream.
And now, I'm awake, and the reality is a nightmare. The severance package sits on the kitchen counter, a thick, official-looking envelope. His attempt to buy my silence, my complicity? A paltry sum for 15 years of my life, for the heart and soul I poured into that company. It feels like an insult, a final twist of the knife. My normal life, just this morning, was a carefully orchestrated symphony of meetings, deadlines, strategic planning, punctuated by moments of connection with the man I loved. Now, it's a deafening silence, a terrifying void. What do I do? Where do I go from here? The questions hang in the air, unanswered, unanswerable. But even through the fog of pain and disbelief, that tiny spark I felt in his office, that cold resolve, remains. He may have taken my company, he may have shattered my heart, but he will not break my spirit. I built an empire once. If I have to, I'll do it again. And this time, I'll be watching my back. The first few days are a thick fog of shock and a grief so profound it feels like a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Sleep is a distant memory, replaced by long, dark hours spent staring at the ceiling, replaying his words, her smirk, the devastating efficiency of their betrayal. The house, our home, feels alien, haunted by the ghost of what we were. Every corner holds a memory, now tainted, poisoned. I move through the rooms like a phantom, unable to settle, unable to escape the echo of his voice, the chilling finality of his decision. I try to make sense of it, to understand how we got here. Was it a slow erosion of love and respect, or a sudden, calculated strike? The questions churn in my mind, a relentless, agonizing loop. I call my sister, my voice breaking as I recount the events, the sheer, brutal efficiency of it all. She listens, her anger a mirror of my own, her support a fragile lifeline in the storm. "He won't get away with this, Sarah," she says, her voice fierce. Men like that, they always get what's coming to them. I want to believe her, but right now, karma feels like a distant, unreliable concept. Mark has my company, my job, and seemingly no conscience. The severance papers lie on the coffee table, untouched. A lawyer friend, after hearing the barest outline, advises caution. "Don't sign anything yet, Sarah. Let me look it over. There might be something there, some leverage." Leverage. The word feels foreign.
Ifil ytterlig powerless, stripped bare.
The silence from Mark is absolute. He moved out the same day, a few suitcases packed with an efficiency that suggested he'd been planning this for a while. No note, no explanation beyond the cold, corporate execution in his office. He's staying at a hotel, I assume, or perhaps already with her. The thought is a fresh stab of pain. I venture out for groceries, needing the mundane task to ground me. The world outside seems oblivious to my personal cataclysm. People laugh, chat, go about their lives. It feels like an affront. Don't they know my world has ended? In the supermarket, I bump into an old colleague, someone who left our company a year ago. Her eyes widen in surprise, then soften with a sympathy that makes my throat tighten. "Sarah? I heard. I'm so sorry," she murmurs, her hand briefly touching my arm. "The news has spread, then?" Of course it has. The corporate gossip mill would be working overtime. "It's a change. I manage, the understatement of the century. If there's anything I can do," she offers, and I know she means it, but what can anyone do? The small interactions are exhausting. The pity, the curiosity, the unspoken questions. I retreat back to the house, my fortress of solitude and sorrow. I try to establish a routine. Wake up after a few fitful hours of sleep, make coffee, which tastes like ash, stare out the window. The days stretch endlessly, a stark contrast to the relentless pace of my former life. I was always busy, always in demand, always driving forward. Now there's just emptiness. My phone, once a constant source of calls, emails, and messages, is silent. My team, my former team, are probably under strict instructions not to contact me. Or perhaps they're simply afraid, their loyalty now pledged to the new regime. The thought stings, another small cut in a tapestry of wounds. I force myself to open my laptop, to look at job sites. The idea of starting over, of explaining the gap in my resume, of answering questions about why I left my own company, is overwhelming. How do I say, my husband fired me to give my job to his mistress? It sounds like the plot of a bad soap opera, not the reality of my life. The financial reality begins to dawn. The severance, even if I accept it, won't last forever. The house has a mortgage. There are bills to pay. Mark was the COO, his salary significant, but mine as CEO was the primary income. He's cut me off, not just emotionally, but financially too. The precision of his cruelty is breathtaking. I spend hours reviewing my personal finances, a grim accounting of my new reality. The numbers on the screen are stark, unforgiving. Panic, cold and sharp, begins to prick at the edges of my grief. He knew this. He knew the position he was putting me in. This wasn't just about getting rid of me at the company, it was about crippling me, ensuring I couldn't fight back. One evening, I find myself staring at the company's website. Her picture is already there, under Our Team, Tiffany Miller, Interim CEO. Her smile is wide, triumphant. Her bio is full of fluff, generic corporate speak that means nothing. It's a pale imitation of what was there before, my photo, my history, my vision. The sight of it, the sheer audacity, fuels the anger that has been simmering beneath the surface of my despair. It's a clean, cold anger, different from the hot rage of that first day. This anger is clarifying. It burns away the fog of self-pity, leaving behind a hard, diamond-like core of determination.
He thinks he's won. She thinks she's arrived.
They're both wrong. The struggle isn't just about survival anymore. It's about justice. It's about taking back what's mine. The path is unclear, shrouded in obstacles, but the destination is fixed in my mind. I will not be erased. I will not be a footnote in their tawdry little story. I close the laptop, the image of Tiffany's smug face burned into my retinas. The initial shock is receding, replaced by a chilling focus. I need a plan. A strategy. He taught me about strategy, ironically. He just never imagined I'd use it against him. The silence from Mark stretches into weeks, a cold, indifferent void that speaks volumes more than any angry outburst could. He's moved on, installed his new queen, and expects me to simply disappear. The arrogance is galling. Friends call, their voices a mixture of outrage and awkward sympathy. A few suggest I should take him to the cleaners in a divorce, but the thought of haggling over assets that were once ours feels demeaning, like picking through the rubble of a bombed-out building. My fight isn't about the remnants of a marriage, it's about the company, my company. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Helen, finally gets back to me about the severance agreement. It's standard, but it's also an insult, Sarah, she says, her voice crisp over the phone. They're lowballing you, hoping you're too distraught to fight. Can I fight it? I ask, pacing the confines of my living room, which now feels more like a cage. We can try to negotiate a better package, certainly. But in terms of the dismissal itself, given your employment contract and the corporate structure, it's an uphill battle. He controlled enough, with his shares and influence, to make this happen, however unethically. Helen's words are a dose of harsh reality. The legal avenues for reinstatement seem slim to none. Mark, with his meticulous planning, has covered his tracks, legally at least. The injustice burns. He used the very structures we built together to tear me down. Meanwhile, whispers from the company start to trickle back to me through former colleagues brave enough to maintain contact. Tiffany, they say, is in over her head. She swans around, issuing contradictory orders, alienating key staff, and focusing more on redecorating my old office than on actual strategy. Morale is plummeting. Mark, apparently, is too blinded by whatever he's blinded by to see it, or perhaps he's too busy propping her up. One former department head, a man I'd mentored for years, calls me, his voice low and conspiratorial. Sarah, it's a disaster. She asked for a report on market synergy potentials. I don't think she even knows what that means. Clients are getting antsy. We lost the Anderson account last week. Losing the Anderson account is a blow. It was one of our flagship clients, one I personally secured. A small, bitter satisfaction mixes with my concern for the company's future. My company. It's still mine in my heart, even if my name is no longer on the door. The financial pressure mounts. Bills arrive with unnerving regularity. My savings are dwindling faster than I'd anticipated. The thought of applying for jobs, of starting again from scratch, is daunting. Every rejection, or even just the silence from potential employers, feels like another confirmation of my reduced state. Am I now defined by Mark's betrayal? Am I the ex-CEO who is spectacularly and publicly ousted? Mark, I hear, is living lavishly. New apartment, new car, expensive dinners with Tiffany, all funded by the company we built. My company. The unfairness is a constant, dull ache. He's thriving on my ruins. I try to channel my anger into something productive. I spend hours at the library, researching corporate law, shareholder rights, anything that might give me an edge. Most of it is dense, impenetrable, but I persevere, driven by a desperate hope. One afternoon, a certified letter arrives. It's from Mark's lawyer. A formal notification of divorce proceedings. He's not even bothering with a conversation. Just another cold, legal document, severing another tie. Attached is a proposed settlement, laughably small, clearly designed to add insult to injury. He wants a quick, clean break, wiping his hands of our 15 years together as if they were a minor inconvenience. The contempt in that offer, the sheer disrespect, it's like a slap in the face. He truly believes I'm beaten, that I'll just roll over and accept whatever crumbs he throws my way. That night, sleep is impossible. I lie awake, the lawyer's letter on my nightstand, a symbol of his utter disregard. The image of Tiffany in my office, of Mark's cold eyes, plays on a loop. The challenges are multiplying: financial ruin, public humiliation, the destruction of my life's work, and now a divorce designed to strip me of what little I have left. But as the first gray light of dawn creeps into the room, something shifts. The despair that has been my constant companion for weeks begins to recede, replaced by a cold, hard fury. He has underestimated me. He has mistaken my shock and grief for weakness. He thinks he's already won. He has no idea what's coming. The challenges are not just obstacles, they are fuel. Every slight, every injustice, every condescending legal document only strengthens my resolve. He wants to erase me? I'll become unforgettable. He wants to see me broken? I'll rise stronger than ever. The fight is just beginning, and I am far from done. The turning point doesn't arrive with a thunderclap or a dramatic revelation. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the dusty archives of my own past. I'm sorting through old boxes, a painful but necessary task as I contemplate downsizing, selling the house that is now too big, too empty, too full of ghosts. Among forgotten college textbooks and sentimental trinkets, I find a folder. It's thin, unassuming, labeled simply Initial Corp Docs. My heart gives a small, hopeful flutter. Inside are copies of the original incorporation papers for Innovate Solutions, the company Mark and I built. My company. I scan the familiar legal jargon, my eyes tracing the lines that detail share distributions, voting rights, a myriad of clauses I haven't thought about in years. Most of it confirms what I already know. Mark and I held the majority of shares, a partnership that felt unbreakable until he broke it. But then, my finger stops on a particular section. Founders' shares. A small percentage, set aside for me, as the original visionary, the one whose idea sparked the entire enterprise. These weren't part of the marital assets, per se. They were mine, issued before Mark even officially came on board as a partner, before we were married. I'd forgotten about them, a tiny detail lost in the whirlwind of growth and success. In the grand scheme of things, they represented a minority stake, not enough to challenge Mark's control when he held his own significant shares and, apparently, the loyalty of our other two investors. Or so I thought. The realization hits me not as a sudden flash, but as a slow, dawning light. These shares, combined with the shares I technically still co-own with Mark as marital property until the divorce is finalized, and perhaps if I could acquire more. A new energy courses through me, a heady mix of adrenaline and trepidation. It's a long shot, a crazy, improbable idea. But it's something. It's a weapon. I call Helen immediately. Helen, I found something. My original founder's shares. They're solely in my name. There's a pause on the other end of the line. Then Helen's voice intrigued. How many, Sarah? And what percentage do they represent now, after all the subsequent investment rounds and splits? I read her the details. It's not a controlling interest, not by a long shot. But it's not insignificant either. Interesting, Helen says, and I can almost hear the gears turning in her sharp legal mind. This changes things. Not immediately, not definitively. But it gives us an angle. Mark might have overlooked these, or dismissed them as trivial. He almost certainly did. In his arrogance, he would have assumed I'd forgotten, or that they were worthless. He was focused on the shares we held jointly, the ones he felt he could manipulate through the divorce, through his position of power. The next few days are a blur of intense activity. Helen and I huddle, poring over company bylaws, shareholder agreements, financial statements I managed to unearth from my old files. We discover that one of our initial angel investors, a kindly old gentleman named Mr. Henderson, has been increasingly disgruntled with the company's new direction under Mark and Tiffany. He'd voiced concerns, apparently, but Mark had brushed him off. Mr. Henderson owns a respectable block of shares, Helen notes, tapping her pen on his name in the shareholder registry. If he's unhappy, perhaps he'd be willing to sell. Or, at the very least, vote with you.
The thought is electrifying.
If I could convince Mr. Henderson, if I could somehow scrape together the funds to buy his shares, or even just secure his proxy. Suddenly, the world doesn't seem so bleak. The despair lifts, replaced by a fierce, almost joyful determination. I have a path, however narrow and treacherous. I have a glimmer of hope. The divorce papers from Mark's lawyer are still on my desk. He wants a quick settlement. He wants me out of his life, erased from the company's history. He thinks he holds all the cards. I pick up the phone, my hand steady. Helen, I say, a new confidence in my voice. Let's draft a response to Mark's divorce settlement. And let's arrange a meeting with Mr. Henderson. The decision is made. I'm no longer just defending. I'm attacking. I'm no longer the victim. I'm the strategist. Mark thought he was playing chess, and I was just a pawn to be sacrificed. He has no idea I'm about to change the game entirely. The fight for my company, for my future, has truly begun. I feel a sense of purpose I haven't felt since the day I was fired. The fear is still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but now it's overshadowed by a thrilling, almost reckless resolve. He lit a fire under me, all right. He just didn't realize I'd use it to burn his new kingdom to the ground. This isn't just about getting my job back anymore. This is about reclaiming my power, my dignity, my name. And I will stop at nothing. The plan is audacious, bordering on insane. It requires stealth, precision, and a significant amount of capital I don't currently possess. The weight of it settles on me, a heavy cloak of responsibility and risk. If this fails, I'll have nothing left. No, worse than nothing. I'll have debts, and the bitter taste of a defeat made even more crushing by a failed counterattack. But the alternative, to slink away quietly, to let Mark and Tiffany revel in their ill-gotten gains, is unthinkable. That cold spark of resolve has now become a roaring fire. Helen is my rock, my strategic counsel. Together, we dissect the company's financials, searching for weaknesses, for opportunities. We learn that Mark, in his haste to install Tiffany and impress her with his decisiveness, or perhaps to fund their new lifestyle, has made some questionable financial moves. He's leveraged company assets for quick cash, taken on debt at unfavorable rates. He's trying to create an illusion of rapid growth, but the foundations are shaky. This recklessness, this arrogance, might just be his undoing. And mine, my opportunity. Securing a meeting with Mr. Henderson proves easier than I anticipated. He agrees immediately, his voice on the phone conveying a weary dissatisfaction. Sarah, my dear, I was so sorry to hear what happened. A travesty. That young man, Mark, he's lost his way. And that woman, well, he trails off, his disapproval palpable. We meet in a quiet, old-fashioned tea room, the kind with starched linen and hushed conversations. Mr. Henderson is frail, but his eyes are sharp, missing nothing. I lay out my findings, my suspicions about Mark's mismanagement, my desperate plan to regain control. I don't sugarcoat the risks. I tell him I need his shares, or at least his unwavering support. He listens patiently, sipping his Earl Grey, his gaze fixed on mine. When I finish, there's a long silence. My heart hammers against my ribs. Everything hinges on his decision. Finally, he sets his cup down with a decisive click. Sarah, he says, his voice firm, you have always been the soul of that company. Your vision, your integrity, that's what I invested in. Mark has betrayed that trust, not just yours, but mine as well. These new quarterly reports, he shakes his head. They're smoke and mirrors. He's running it into the ground, chasing short-term applause. He leans forward. I can't, in good conscience, let that happen. My shares are yours, my dear, if you want them. Or my proxy, if that's more feasible for you financially right now. We need to save the company from him. Tears well in my eyes, tears of gratitude and relief, so profound they steal my breath. Mr. Henderson, I don't know how to thank you. Thank me by succeeding, Sarah, he says, a faint smile on his lips. Thank me by putting that company back on the right path. His support is a monumental victory, but it's only the first step. His shares, combined with my founder's shares and my portion of the marital shares, which Helen is fighting tooth and nail to protect from Mark's greedy clutches in the divorce proceedings, get me closer. But I still need more to guarantee a controlling interest to ensure I can oust Mark and Tiffany decisively. The next few weeks are a frantic, clandestine operation. Helen and I identify other minority shareholders, individuals who invested early on, who might be disillusioned with Mark's leadership or simply looking for an exit. Some are sympathetic. Others are purely pragmatic, willing to sell if the price is right. This is where the real challenge lies. Raising the capital. I have some savings, but not nearly enough. The severance, which I still haven't touched, is a drop in the ocean. I consider taking out a loan, but the banks are hesitant, given my unemployed status and the risky nature of a hostile takeover bid. My sister, bless her loyal heart, offers to remortgage her house. I refuse absolutely. I can't risk her security. This is my fight. Then an unexpected lifeline. An old college friend, now a successful venture capitalist, hears whispers of my situation. We meet for coffee, and I, hesitantly at first, then with growing conviction, lay out my plan. She listens, her expression unreadable. I expect skepticism, perhaps pity. Instead, when I finish, she grins. Sarah, that's the most beautifully ruthless thing I've heard all year. Mark always was a bit of an arrogant prick, wasn't he?
Count me in.
Not just for old time's sake, but because this is a damned good story, and I think you can pull it off. And frankly, under competent leadership, yours, that company is still a good investment. She offers me a private loan, with terms that are more than fair. It's a gamble for her too, but she believes in me. Her faith is like a shot of adrenaline. With her backing and Mr. Henderson's shares pledged, the momentum builds. We discreetly approach other shareholders. Some are wary, but the news of Tiffany's blunders and Mark's increasingly erratic decisions is starting to spread. The company, once a shining star, is beginning to look tarnished. My offer, to buy them out or to align with me, starts to look more appealing than sticking with a sinking ship. All of this is done in the deepest secrecy. Mark, cocooned in his new power, his new relationship, is oblivious. He's too busy playing king to notice the rumblings in the foundations of his castle. He sees my silence, my lack of public outcry, as capitulation. He probably thinks I'm defeated, licking my wounds, preparing to accept his insulting divorce settlement. The strain is immense. I'm operating on caffeine and sheer willpower. Every phone call, every meeting is fraught with tension. The fear of discovery is constant. If Mark gets wind of this before I'm ready, he could take steps to block me, to consolidate his power further. Helen is a miracle worker, navigating the complex legalities, drafting agreements, ensuring every I is dotted, every T crossed. My apartment becomes a war room, littered with documents, spreadsheets, shareholder lists. The divorce negotiations are a useful distraction, a smokescreen. Mark's lawyer pushes for a quick resolution, trying to pressure me into signing away my rights to our joint assets, including the company shares. Helen stonewalls, counters, drags her feet, buying me precious time. Mark, I hear through the grapevine, is getting impatient, annoyed. Good. Let him be annoyed. Let him underestimate me. Slowly, painstakingly, share by share, promise by promise, I claw my way towards that magic number, that controlling interest. It feels like climbing a sheer cliff face in the dark, with only the faintest hope of a summit. There are setbacks, moments of despair when a key shareholder hesitates, when the numbers don't quite add up, when the sheer audacity of what I'm attempting threatens to overwhelm me. But then I picture Tiffany's smug face in my office. I remember Mark's cold, dismissive eyes. And the fire burns hotter. The deepening crisis isn't just about the external challenges, it's internal too. The loneliness, the constant anxiety, the weight of the secrets I'm carrying. Some nights, I just sit in the dark, wondering if I'm strong enough, if I'm smart enough, to see this through. The ghost of the woman I was, confident and secure in her world, seems to mock my current, precarious existence. But every morning I get up, I drink my coffee, and I fight.
For my company.
For my name. For every woman who has ever been underestimated, betrayed, and told she was redundant. Mark thought he was closing a chapter. He has no idea I'm about to rewrite the entire book. The final pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place, but the tension is almost unbearable. Mark, I learn, is planning a major press announcement in 2 weeks. He's going to unveil a bold new strategic vision for the company, undoubtedly co-authored by the brilliant Tiffany. He's booked a conference room at a high-end hotel, invited industry press, analysts. He wants to cement his image as the dynamic new leader, with Tiffany as his visionary partner. The arrogance is breathtaking. He's essentially throwing a party to celebrate my demise and his triumph. This timeline accelerates everything. I need to consolidate my position before that announcement. If he successfully sways public and investor opinion, my task becomes infinitely harder. The pressure is immense. Sleep is a luxury I can no longer afford. My apartment is a chaotic mess of legal documents, takeout containers, and hastily scribbled notes. I'm living on adrenaline and the fierce, burning hope that this insane plan will actually work. Helen and I are in constant communication. We've secured pledges and sale agreements from enough minority shareholders, combined with Mr. Henderson's substantial block and my own founder's shares. The final, crucial piece is the legal standing of the shares Mark and I co-owned as marital property. His lawyers are still trying to argue that his operational control gave him de facto authority over their voting rights until the divorce is settled. Helen is arguing passionately and correctly that as co-owner, I retain my say, especially if I can prove his actions are detrimental to the company's value and, by extension, the value of those marital assets. Tiffany's disastrous performance and Mark's reckless financial gambits are, ironically, providing ample evidence for Helen's case. A small, private meeting of key shareholders is called by Mr. Henderson. Ostensibly, it's to discuss concerns about the company's current trajectory. In reality, it's my D-Day. It's where I will lay out my position, reveal the extent of my consolidated shareholdings, and call for a vote of no confidence in Mark's leadership, specifically his appointment of Tiffany as interim CEO. Mark is invited, of course. He arrives late, radiating a smug confidence that makes my stomach churn. Tiffany is on his arm, dressed in a ridiculously expensive suit, looking like she's playing dress-up in a grown-up's world. They survey the small gathering, me, Mr. Henderson, and representatives of a few other significant shareholder blocks I've managed to win over, with an air of bored condescension. Mark probably assumes this is just a minor protest, a few disgruntled old-timers he can easily placate or dismiss. He doesn't even seem to register my presence initially, or if he does, he views me as a ghost at the feast, a powerless observer. The sight of him, so blissfully unaware of the storm about to break over his head, is almost pitiable. Almost. Mr. Henderson opens the meeting, his voice calm but firm. He outlines the concerns: falling client confidence, questionable expenditures, a lack of clear strategy. Mark listens with a patronizing smile, occasionally exchanging amused glances with Tiffany. He's ready with his rebuttals, his spin. When Mr. Henderson finishes, Mark clears his throat, preparing to deliver what I'm sure he believes will be a reassuring and commanding speech. But before he can begin, I stand up. The room falls silent. All eyes turn to me. Mark's smile falters, a flicker of surprise, then annoyance, in his eyes. Tiffany looks momentarily confused, as if wondering why the fired ex-wife is even allowed to speak. "Mark," I say, my voice surprisingly steady, betraying none of the anxiety churning inside me. "Before you begin, I believe there's something you and Ms. Miller, and indeed some members of this informal council, should be made aware of." I place a folder on the polished boardroom table. It's not a thick folder, but its contents are explosive. Over the past few weeks, I continue, my gaze locking with Mark's, I've been busy. While you've been focused on your new direction, I've been focused on the company's true ownership structure. Mark scoffs, a humorless sound. "Sarah, really? We all know the ownership structure. I'm the COO, and with the board's full confidence, I'm leading this company forward. Your shares, our shares, will be settled in the divorce. This is hardly the forum for that." "Oh, but it is, Mark," I say, a small, cold smile playing on my lips. "Because this isn't about divorce. This is about control." I open the folder. These documents represent binding agreements and proxy votes, including my own undisputed founder's shares, the shares held by Mr. Henderson here, and commitments from several other key investors present or represented. I now control, let's see. I pretend to calculate, though I know the number by heart. 52% of the voting shares of Innovate Solutions. The color drains from Mark's face. His jaw, moments ago set in arrogant lines, goes slack. He looks from me to the folder, then to Mr. Henderson, whose expression is one of grim satisfaction. Tiffany just looks lost, her perfectly painted lips parted in a silent, "Oh," of disbelief. That's not possible," Mark stammers, his voice losing its confident timbre. "Our shares, the marital property, are still co-owned, Mark." Helen's voice cuts in smoothly. She's entered the room quietly and now stands beside me, a bastion of legal calm. "And until such time as a divorce settlement is finalized by a court, any attempt by one party to unilaterally exercise voting rights in a manner detrimental to the other party, or to the value of the asset itself, can be challenged." And given recent performance and appointments, she lets the implication hang in the air. Mark is sputtering now, his face a mask of dawning horror and outrage. This is a coup. You can't do this." "Actually, Mark," I say, my voice still quiet, still controlled, "I can, and I am. As the representative of the majority shareholding, I am calling an immediate extraordinary general meeting. My first motion will be to remove you from your position as COO and as a director of the board, effective immediately, for gross mismanagement and actions detrimental to the company's health and shareholder value." I turn my gaze to Tiffany, who looks like she's about to faint. "And Ms. Miller, your tenure as interim CEO, which was never formally ratified by a legitimate majority of shareholders, is also terminated, effective immediately. Please clear my desk by the end of the day." The silence in the room is absolute, broken only by Mark's ragged breathing. He looks like a man who has been physically struck. The arrogance, the confidence, all stripped away, leaving behind a raw, desperate panic. He's been completely blindsided. He never saw it coming. He thought he had me beaten, disposed of, irrelevant. He was wrong. Tiffany, to her credit, recovers first, though her recovery is far from graceful. Her face, moments ago pale with shock, flushes a furious, mottled red. You bitch, she screeches, her voice shrill, all pretense of corporate polish gone. You can't do this to us. Mark. She turns to him, her eyes pleading, but Mark is staring at me, his expression a maelstrom of disbelief, fury, and a dawning, terrible understanding. He knows. He knows he's lost. Security will escort you both from the premises, I say, my voice devoid of emotion. I'd arrange for them to be discreetly on standby. This was always part of the plan. A clean, decisive break. Tiffany opens her mouth to protest further, but a look from Mr. Henderson, cold and dismissive, seems to silence her. She grabs her ridiculously expensive handbag, her knuckles white. Then, with a final, venomous glare at me, she turns on her heel and storms out of the room, almost tripping in her haste. Mark doesn't move. He just stares at me, his eyes filled with a toxic brew of hatred and something that looks suspiciously like fear. He built his entire new world on the assumption of my powerlessness. Now, that world has crumbled around him. Sarah, he begins, his voice hoarse, attempting a tone of reason, of negotiation perhaps. I cut him off. There's nothing left to say, Mark. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine. 2 uniformed security guards enter the room, their presence imposing and final. They flank Mark, their expressions neutral. He looks at me one last time, his face a mask of defeat. Then, without another word, he turns and allows himself to be escorted out. The man who fired me, who tried to destroy me, is now being frog-marched out of the company we built together, a company that is now, unequivocally, mine. As the door closes behind him, a profound silence fills the room. Mr. Henderson lets out a long breath. Well, Sarah, he says, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. That was remarkably well executed. I sink into a chair, the adrenaline that has fueled me for weeks suddenly draining away, leaving me trembling and exhausted, but with a sense of triumph so fierce, so absolute, it's almost overwhelming. Tiffany didn't even wait for the end of the day. Reports filter back to me within the hour. After a brief, tearful meltdown in my, now her former, office, during which she apparently hurled a stapler at a wall, she packed a small box of personal items and fled the building, muttering about lawsuits and unfair dismissal. She quit. The moment her protector lost his power, the moment the gravy train derailed, she was gone. Her loyalty, it seems, was as shallow as her business acumen. The delicious irony isn't lost on me. He fired me to give her my job. I acquired controlling shares, fired him, and she quit, all within the span of a few chaotic hours. It's not just karma, it's a beautifully orchestrated symphony of comeuppance. The betrayer, so confident in his scheme, so dismissive of his victim, completely blindsided and overthrown. And his accomplice, left high and dry, her ambitions turned to ash. It's more satisfying than I could have ever imagined. The empire he tried to steal is now firmly back in the hands of its rightful queen. And his queen? She's abdicated in a fit of pique. Perfect. The aftermath is surprisingly quiet. The dramatic crescendo of the confrontation fades into the meticulous, demanding work of reclaiming and rebuilding. Mark is gone, a specter of his former arrogance. Tiffany is a rapidly fading, embarrassing memory. The office, my office, feels different, lighter, as if a toxic presence has been cleansed. The first thing I do is open all the windows, letting fresh air circulate, symbolically and literally. My old team, the ones who hadn't been driven out by Tiffany's chaotic reign or Mark's heavy-handedness, welcome me back with a mixture of relief and awe. There are tears, hugs, and a palpable sense of a burden lifted. Their loyalty, tested and proven, is a balm to my soul. We have a lot of damage to undo, morale to rebuild, client relationships to mend. The Anderson account? My first call is to Mr. Anderson himself. He's delighted to hear my voice, and by the end of our conversation, we're back on track. Small victories, but they accumulate, like bricks rebuilding a shattered wall. The legalities of Mark's formal removal are handled swiftly by Helen and the newly reconstituted board, now firmly under my control with Mr. Henderson as a steadfast ally. The divorce proceedings take on a new complexion. Mark, stripped of his leverage and his company income, is suddenly far more amenable to a fair settlement. He's no longer negotiating from a position of power. He's a defanged tiger, still snarling, but ultimately harmless. The settlement we reach is equitable, dividing our marital assets fairly, including his now much diminished claim on any company value he tried to argue he'd built. His legal battles drain what little he has left. He's a diminished figure, a shadow of the corporate titan he aspired to be by trampling on me. There's a bittersweetness to it all. The marriage is over, unequivocally. The trust, once the bedrock of our relationship, is shattered beyond repair. I mourn the man I thought he was, the dreams we once shared. That grief is real, a dull ache that lingers beneath the triumph. But there's also a profound sense of liberation. I am free of his deceit, his manipulation. I am standing on my own, stronger and more resilient than I ever knew. The company begins to heal. Under my leadership, with a renewed sense of purpose and a clear vision, we start to undo the damage Mark and Tiffany inflicted. It's hard work, long hours, but it's fulfilling in a way it hadn't been for a long time, even before the betrayal. I'm not just rebuilding a business. I'm reclaiming my legacy on my own terms. Mr. Henderson becomes a mentor, a wise counsel. My venture capitalist friend, who provided the crucial loan, is now a valued board member, her sharp insights invaluable. I'm surrounded by people who believe in me, who trust my judgment. It's a stark contrast to the isolation and gaslighting of my final months with Mark. Sometimes, late at night, alone in my office, the city lights twinkling below, I reflect on the whirlwind of the past few months. The shock, the pain, the despair, then the dawning resolve, the clandestine planning, the terrifying gamble, and finally, the vindication. It feels like a lifetime condensed into a season. I've learned hard lessons about trust, about ambition, about the darkness that can hide behind a familiar face. But I've also learned about my own strength, my own capacity for resilience, for strategic thinking, for fighting back when cornered. He thought he could break me. Instead, he forged me into something stronger, sharper. The dry humor I sometimes found in the absurdity of it all remains. The image of Tiffany's face when she realized her sugar daddy was no longer in charge, her subsequent tantrum and flight, it still brings a grim smile to my face. She was a symptom, not the cause, but her downfall was a particularly satisfying bonus.
Life moves on.
The company stabilizes, then begins to thrive again. I find a new rhythm, a new sense of peace. The house, once a symbol of shared dreams and then painful memories, I eventually sell. I buy a smaller place, one that is entirely mine, filled with my own choices, my own future. There's a quiet satisfaction in knowing that Mark's attempt to destroy me not only failed but backfired spectacularly. He lost everything, his job, his reputation, his mistress, who, I hear, quickly moved on to her next target once Mark's financial situation became clear, and any claim to the empire I built. He's a cautionary tale now, a footnote in my story, not the author of its tragic end. The future is unwritten, but for the first time in a long time, it feels bright with possibility, a canvas I get to paint myself. The scars remain, a reminder of the battle fought and won. But they're scars of victory, not defeat. And they taught me that sometimes, when someone tries to take everything from you, the only option is to take it all back, and then some. If this story hit close to home, or if you've ever had to fight for what's yours against incredible odds, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Your stories remind us we're not alone. And please, if you feel so inclined, subscribing helps bring more of these narratives to life. Thank you for being here, for listening.